If I'm honest, as a complete running shoe geek, I'm always looking for something that might give me an edge. Not necessarily comfort or durability, but that racing edge. I've worn most of the big name super shoes, the Nikes, the Adidas's, Pumas, Asics, and at this point, most of them follow a fairly familiar formula. So when something comes along that looks genuinely different, it gets my attention. 361 Degrees is a brand that most in the West have never tried, but it's huge in Asia and it's quietly building credibility in the West. And when I saw the engineering on the Flame 4, the exposed plate, the massive heel cavity, the 4-foot window, I was curious. Not because I really needed a new race shoe, though can you ever have too many? But because I wanted to know if this did something that others didn't. So I bought a pair. In fact, I bought two, and here's what I found. Hey, I'm Jim and you're watching Race Day, where I share my take on the gear I'm using as a 50-something runner who's still chasing personal bests. This is the Flame 4. What is it? It is a full-plated carbon racing shoe. It sits in the same category as things like the Vaporfly, the Saucony Dolphin Pro, the New Balance Super Comp Elite. It's not a trainer, not a super trainer, it's a race shoe. So let's look at the stats. We have 36mm in the heel stack down to a 30mm 4-foot, a 6mm drop, though it can feel a lot higher than that. The foam is a beaded PEBA compound. It's firm, it's resilient, it's punchy. It's got a full-length carbon plate which is extremely stiff, and it's really distinctive because it curves around the sidewalls. In my size, it weighs in at around 215 grams, and the price, well, I picked this up for a little over £70 on AliExpress, but prices vary depending on where you buy it. For a carbon racing shoe, it's really competitively priced. But the spec isn't really what made me curious. The engineering is. Flip this shoe over and the underside looks unusual. There's a massive cavity cut through the heel and a window here beneath the 4-foot, and the carbon plate is actually visible from both sides of the shoe, curling up along the midsole walls. This isn't just for visual drama. Every part of this design is doing something. The heel cavity allows the foam columns around it to collapse and rebound more dramatically. The plate wrapping up the sides helps cradle the foot and guides it through its stride. And the 4-foot window, that gives the plate space to flex slightly and lets the foam beneath it load properly. Most super shoes today follow a very recognizable template: plate, foam, rocker. The Flame 4 feels like 361 Degrees are experimenting with that formula. The upper is very much what you'd expect from a racing shoe: a thin mesh, lightweight and breathable. The lacing is offset, which gives it a kind of Vaporfly style look when you glance down at it. The laces themselves are serrated and grip well once tightened. My only complaint is that they're a bit fiddly to thread through the eyelets each time you lace up. The heel counter is semi-structured with a textured internal pad that grips the sock nicely. I didn't experience any heel slip. The tongue is thin and ungusted. It can shift slightly before you dial things in properly. There's also a reinforced toe bumper here, which is unusual for a race shoe, but might add to the durability. For me, the fit was true to size, though the midfoot is slightly generous. And if you sit between sizes, you might want to consider going half a size down. Now, before I get to the ride, I want to talk about context, because I think that really matters here. The shoes that I've been running in recently, as I've been banging out loads of marathon miles, are things like the Mega Blast, the Red Hair Ultra, Rad UFO, and even my race shoes, the Fadian Elite 6, are pretty soft. I think that's what generally my running over the past 3 months has been. Lots of miles in soft, bouncy shoes. So coming to this more old-fashioned racing shoe, definitely felt like a stark contrast. The foam is firmer, the plate is extremely stiff, and overall the ride feels much more mechanical and aggressive. And if I'd come to this shoe after doing lots of running in something like the Vaporfly, then perhaps my take on it would be very different. But after months of running in shoes that are soft, this definitely felt harder, it definitely felt more demanding. And I think in order to be fair to this shoe and to you, it's important to kind of give that context. So let's talk about the ride. Well, walking the shoe feels strange. You're getting tipped forward. It doesn't want to go slowly. It doesn't want to jog. It really wants you to pick up the pace. And that's when things start to make sense. The heel cavity allows the foam to compress quite noticeably, and you land and then spring back. The carbon plate is extremely stiff, one of the stiffest that I've run in, and it guides the foot from a lateral landing through to the toe off. The toe off itself is sharp and aggressive, not a gentle roll forward, more of a mechanical launch. The best word I can think of for this ride is directed. Energy return feels focused rather than soft or bouncy. The shoe feels like it's trying to guide you through your stride. There was one moment that really highlighted this for me. I wore the Flame 4 for a track session yesterday, and halfway through the workout I ended up switching shoes to the Leaning Fading Elite 6, and the difference was immediate. I dropped from doing 6:15 per mile to 5:30 a mile almost immediately. More importantly for me, it just felt easier running in this shoe. The rhythm felt more natural, the effort level came down. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Flame 4 is slower. It probably means something more interesting, that the Fading 6 Elite just seems to work better with my mechanics and my running style. And that's something that we often forget about racing shoes. Two shoes can both be very fast, but one might simply suit your stride or you as a runner better. Now let's talk stability. Given the massive cavity in the midsole, you might expect this shoe to feel unstable. It actually doesn't. The arch shape plate that wraps around the sides of the shoe helps cradle the foot and keeps it centered. On straight roads, I find it very stable. Sharp corners at pace still required a bit of awareness, as with any stiff racing shoe, but it never felt unsafe. It's actually quite clever, the engineering on this thing. The outsole uses 2 segments of RPU rubber. The grip in dry conditions is excellent. In wet conditions, it was generally good, though on very smooth surfaces, it could slip a little. Durability looks promising too. The foam feels resilient and the rubber coverage is quite generous for a racing shoe. One quirk that I think that people should know about is that it squeaks as the foam compresses against the carbon plate, especially when the shoe is slightly damp. You can hear a bit of a squeaking sound. It doesn't affect the performance, but it can be noticeable. And if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, I think it's worth knowing about. From an engineering point of view, I find this shoe generally interesting, but I also find it hard and probably too aggressive for me. The foam is firm, the plate is extremely stiff, and that combination asks a lot from the legs. For stronger runners or runners who prefer a firmer, more mechanical ride, this could feel fantastic, but personally, for me, it's just a bit too aggressive. I prefer softer, more forgiving racing shoes. So what's my verdict? Buy this shoe if you like aggressive racing shoes. This could work brilliantly for 10k through to half marathon distances. Wait if you're new to carbon plated racing shoes. This shoe probably isn't for a beginner. And skip if you prefer softer, more forgiving super shoes. Most super shoes feel like variations of the same formula: plate, foam, rocker. the Flame 4 feels a little different. And as someone who spends far too much time thinking about midsole geometry and carbon plates, that alone made this shoe worth exploring. It might not be the best shoe for me, but it's certainly one of the most interesting I've tried. You've been watching Race Day. I hope that this review helped you. If it did, please subscribe.